My bucolic life, we have 3 city stripes. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Hello everybody, welcome back. So it's been a while, I know. My cold is past, issues are over, you know, hopefully. And I'm ready to get started on a fun project. Now, yesterday I was outside puttering about, planting things because it's getting to be that season here. And I have made a decision. I have, as you know, hi kitty, you know, my big old middle-aged mom arms, and I have been hiding them for years, especially this upper part, you know. But being out in the sunshine and everything, I feel like I want a strappy sundress. Will I be bold enough to wear this off the farm? I don't have a clue, but I want to make one just so I can have it while I'm out there puttering around, you know. So I'm going to make myself a very fun one. Yes, I am closer to 60 than 50, but you know what? I keep seeing all of these ads where they're like, oh no, wear whatever makes you happy. And this is gonna make me happy. So before all the haters come on, it's just for fun. And I am gonna use this McCalls pattern, okay? And there are 2 different versions. There's this one with the button up front all the way, and there's this one with the big old tie. I'm gonna do the big old tie. Yes, with a peekaboo hole down there. I am. Okay, and on the back of this one, well, they're all the same pretty much on the back, just the standard back bodice type look there. I'm gonna make it out of a 100% cotton. It's actually just a thick quilting cotton, and it's a dark color. And the reason I'm gonna use a dark color is because I don't wanna line it. I want this to be light and breezy. And if I use a light colored cotton, it's gonna be too sheer. I'm gonna be self-conscious and all that kind of stuff. So we are going purple this time, purple and paisley. Purple and paisley. I know, it's wild. So yeah, the bodice, I want to be fairly tight, okay? I don't want gapiness, I want it to be fairly tight. So because of that, I am gonna be cutting out my standard size 16. I think that that is gonna work. It does have a button front opening, kind of like the red dress that I just did, had that little button plackety looking opening. So that's gonna be fun. So I have absolutely no idea how I'm gonna look in this, but we're gonna carry forward. So let me go ahead, open the pattern envelope, and get started figuring it out. Okay, so taking a quick look at the layout here, it is gonna be this dress A, and I use pieces 1 through 8. It does have pockets. I can't really tell the difference except for this one seems to have lace on the bottom. So at this point, I don't know the difference between A and B. But I might make mine with a skirt that is closer to the length of C, okay? I like this length and I like pockets. So if you want to picture this bodice top with this skirt bottom, that's what I'm going for, because if I'm flashing all my skin up here, you know, this has to be kind of camouflage, because showing everything at once, I think, would just throw people into a seizure. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be cutting out. So instead of the inseam pockets, I'm going to be using these big patch pockets on the front. Okay, so I've got all of my pieces cut out, and I did pre-wash and pre-dry my fabric, so don't worry, all the shrink is out, you know, serged it before I did. The skirt itself, if you look here on the long version, which is what I'm going to do, my legs are shorter than their standard, so I am actually going to be shortening the bottom of my skirt by 4 inches. And the skirt itself, the pieces are like big rectangles, so I could just take a straight strip of 4 inches off the bottom and call that good. So I'm going to do that for both the front and the back pieces. I wanted to point out, I did not iron my entire fabric before I'm cutting it out, but I did iron just the selvages because that's the worst of it. Everything else I think is fairly unwrinkled, you know, and I don't want to have to iron this. Once it's a finished garment, I want to be able to use it in its natural state. So I'm only ironing out there, leaving all of this nice and soft and as is. Okay, I wanted to show you something. This is my skirt front piece, and the skirt front piece is wider than the back because the back is cut on a fold, and this has extra front seam allowances and overlap and all that. This piece is about 2 inches too wide to cut, you know, on my 45-inch wide fabric the nice normal way, so that I have 2 selvages over here and a fold over there. I don't want to, I don't think it's going to make a difference, and I don't want to have to cut one piece, move it down, cut another piece just for that much extra when the whole front skirt's just going to be gathered anyway. So just letting you know what I'm going to do. This is a dot for a pocket. I want to keep that. This is a dot for a pocket. I kind of want to keep that. So over here, this is the center front. I'm just going to make a little 1-inch pleat and tape that closed. And that's going to take 2 inches out of the width, leave the pocket centered where I want it to be, and I can cut it out easier. So will that save me any time once I do all of my little pleats? Probably not, but it's what I want to do. So there you go. Hello and welcome to actually the day after. I was out and about yesterday having fun, and I'm going to get started sewing this, but I picked up a sticker. I'll show you. I got to figure out where to put it. I love this. Rebels run with scissors. Yeah, that's me. I'll put it somewhere. But we need to get started on the bodice here. Now it's going to be lined. It is lined with the same fabric. So there's 4 pieces basically of each single and 2 pieces of that center back piece that's cut on a fold. And for the view that I'm doing that has the tie, you don't interface it. If you're doing the one that's standard, they want you to put interfacing on that front section, but we're not doing that, so I'm not worrying about it. It looks like the only other piece that they have you interface for my version is that front facing opening on the skirt, and when I get to that stage, I'll put interfacing on it then. So usually I serge around all of the edges of my fabrics, especially if it's a woven cotton. But since this is going to be fully lined and fully encased in itself and everything, I'm not going to, because the purpose of serging, at least for me, is to keep it so that it's not going to fray when I'm washing it and drying it. And if they're all encased inside a lining, it's going to be fine. Nothing's going to go anywhere. So with that, I'm going to start up here at the bodice. The first couple directions are for my view, then it goes into the other view. So I'm going to get a center back and 2 of my side backs, and we're going to put those together. I wanted to show you, I figured out where I'm putting it. I have a little dish that has all of my snips. I put it on that. Anyway, you have to have fun sometimes. Seriously, you do. All right, on these pieces, first here, well, let me get started on the center back. I want to be able to transfer my markings, and if I flip this over, you can see better. The only mark on the center back is this little notch right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and clip that, put this back here so it's lined up. So for the side back, there are 2 dots up on the top in addition to notches, and those are marking where your strap is going to be lining up in the back. So I do want to mark that, but I'm going to be marking that on the wrong side because the wrong side of my fabric is a little bit lighter. So before I go away too far, I want to go ahead and put these on because it would be very easy to get this switched, okay? So at this point I have punched these holes, and if you're new here, I use a leather hole punch and a very thick piece of leather. This is a coaster. It's very thick. I put that just under the tissue paper, punch out the hole, and then I have a hole in my tissue paper at those spots. And then I'm going to reach through with a heat erasable pen. I'm going to use red this time, and I can just color those, okay? Now on a busy print where they want to disappear, I put a bullseye around them because that makes it easier for me to find, you know? So I'm going to go ahead and mark all 4 pieces while I have everything handy here, just to make sure I keep these straight. So what they're going to have you do is sew the back to the side backs and just work on just the back first. And they say put these aside and you'll sew those together later. Well, this is going to be the facing, and at this point I'm going to do both sets at the same time just so I can keep it straight, because that way I don't have to worry about it. So what I do here, I'm going to also do here. So I have my center back, and it does have 1 notch. So I'm going to take the side that also has the 1 notch, line it up over here, okay, and stitch this at 5/8 of an inch, and then press that seam allowance open. So I'll do the same thing over here, stitch that, press that seam allowance open on both sets. I'm going to show you the machine I'm using today. I just finished this one. This is a Singer 66. I just finished her a couple days ago, so I brought her up and I'm going to give her a run. I am putting her up for sale on my website. There's a link in the description if you're interested. But she's very Art Deco, kind of a Gatsby type thing. So I am calling her Daisy for right now. You know, Gatsby's girlfriend type person. But anyway, that's what we're going to be using today. Well, as soon as I pressed my seam allowances open, I erased my dots for my strap. I'm not going to worry about it because basically the strap, here's that princess seam we just did, the strap is going to be placed just lining up on the outside edge of this princess seam. So I can remember that. So now I'm going to go ahead and get my front piece. This is the big tie that's going to tie the whole front together, which is kind of fun. So this side here is the side that gets sewn onto my side seam over here. And as far as dots, again, there are 2 right here, which is going to be where the strap goes. So I will mark those on the wrong side of my fabric. Okay, so let me get that marked. I'm going to pin this side over here and stitch it on at 5/8 of an inch. All right, so at this point, I have 2 of these pieces, these big long pieces that look like this on this side, that on that side. And I need to set this aside for a minute because I need to create my shoulder straps before I actually join those together. Okay, so we have this piece number 4, shoulder strap. You did cut 2, or at least I cut 2. And there's a fold line in the middle, and I can tell from where these dots are positioned that we're using a 5/8 inch seam allowance, okay, which is kind of wide for a strap, but you know, it is what it is. So I'm going to fold these in half, and I'm going to go ahead and press it just so it's going to stay where it wants, you know, and then stitch it right along here at 5/8 of an inch on both of my straps. Okay, so now that that is done, there's my little stitching line. I'm going to come back and trim off with my pinking shears, a little more than half of that seam allowance, because it'll just make it easier for me and less bulky when I turn this to have that taken off, okay? So now it's down to about there. So I'm going to use one of my favorite turners, which is this big lobster claw shaped turner. And I put it on the round side, move the fabric over it and clamp it together, and then just push the entire tube over to the other side. Getting it started is the hardest part, and then once it's going, it'll just kind of push over. And as soon as I can see the little end here, I will be done. I could have pushed it farther, but okay. So I see my little end point, then I can just open it up, pull this off, and pull it out, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the ironing board and press this nice and flat with the little seam line on one of the edges. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get my straps placed on here. And you know, my first impression is, well, it would be a lot easier if I had actually marked where my front straps go on the right side instead of the wrong side, because this is the side I'm looking at as I'm working. So I do have my two little dots here. I'm just going to transfer them over here in just a second off camera, okay? But what I'm going to start off with is attaching them at the back. And remember, here's those seams, and it's just barely on this side of that seam. So I'm basically lining up the side of my strap, which I know it's hard to see, but I'm lining that up with that seam line, okay? So one of the other main thing is to make sure that you don't twist your straps as you're pinning them on. So let me go ahead, transfer those two little dots over here, just, you know, so that we can see it easier, and I'll be right back. Okay, so right here, I just put these two pins sticking out because that might be easier to see. So I have my strap coming down. I'm just gonna kind of wrap it around this way so that I have the side that has the seam on the outside. I want that to stay on the outside, okay? So just to make sure I have it correct, what I'm gonna do is put a pin going straight across here at about the 5/8 inch point, move this pin over here straight across at about the 5/8 inch point, and flip my strap up, okay? If that looks correct and it looks like I could put that over my shoulder and everything is good, then you know you've got it on the right way and nothing is twisted, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and stitch straight across here, not at 5/8, a little bit less, probably about 1/2 inch, so it won't show when I do my final stitching, but just to keep those 2 points anchored in place. Okay, so if you can see, I've got my little straps stitched on there, you know, just holding it in place. This is going to be my outer layer. My other one that I sewed together, this is going to be my facing. So we're gonna combine these two right now, and I'm just gonna match up all of my seams up here, all my outside edges. The only difference is when you get down here at the bottom, at the point 5/8 of an inch up, and I'm just gonna draw a line on here so you can see where I'm talking about. At that point, I need to have this facing edge folded up, okay? So right here, I'm just gonna pin that up like that. I know I am slightly off camera. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so with the bottom edge on this side and that side, this gets folded up like that. Other than that, the two layers just match up perfectly, and you sew all the way around at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, starting here and ending over here with this side folded up like that. Okay, so with that done, I am going to once again pink away about half of my seam allowance, you know, just to make it easier. The pinking will make it so that the fabric can flex better as it goes around a curve, you know, which is nice. Also up here at the very corner of my tie, I want to make sure that I don't have bulk up there. You know, we want that to lay nice and flat. So I'm just going about there and about there and then straight across the top. Okay, I'm giving myself plenty of meat after the stitch, but not so much that it's gonna bog everything down. So let me finish trimming this off, and I'm gonna flip the whole thing right side out. Okay, so the next step is to understitch this. So I'm gonna see if I can get this in here. Basically, to understitch it, you're going to want to push your tiny little seam allowance. I'll show you on this side here. Okay, so this is where I had a starting point. You know, this is where it's folded up. The seam allowance is going to want to go towards that folded up side. The folded up side is the inside piece. That's the facing. And you want to understitch over here. Okay? So the seam allowance, as little as it is, it's getting pushed that way. So I'm actually going to do my understitching while I'm looking at the outside, but you can kind of feel through the fabric where that seam allowance is, and you want to make sure it stays on the right side. Okay? Anyhow, I have it started over here. And I just wanted to show you, I am basically just doing a little at a time. And you're not going to be able to get all the way around because of this tie, you know, probably only up to that point. And then I'll have to stop, start again over here, go across the back, stop, and then go back down the other side. But basically, just taking your time, spreading it apart. I don't know if you can see this here is the seam line. I have my seam allowances over here under this side, and I am just doing a little straight stitch just barely on this side of it. Okay, Daisy's doing great. She's a cute little girl. So when I am all done, if you can see, this is my little row of stitching right here. And that's going to make it really, really nice looking on the outside when I go to actually press this. So let me finish this. Just trying to point out, make sure your seam allowances are staying over on the facing side. And only go as far as you can. When it gets too bunchy, just stop, reposition everything, and start again. Okay, so I'm over here at my ironing board, and as I press it, I have the facing side up so I can watch where my little understitching is. And if you can see, it's kind of pulling it towards the facing, so I actually have just a peek of the other side of the fabric poking out at the top. You know, it's a very busy print, sorry about that. And that's by design, so that on the outside, with it rolling over, you don't see any stitching line, and it gives a really nice edge, okay? So anyway, I am just slowly going around here and pressing it up here in these parts. Of course, there is not, I need to clip that thread. There is not understitching all the way down just because, you know, it's impossible. You can't get it, the understitching all the way down into these really wildly long shape points. But just do the best you can to press that nice and flat. And my understitching picks up right about here, you know, from here all the way down. And that gives it a nice edge too. So down here at the bottom, remember this side is kind of turned under. I'm just going to press it maybe about 4 inches. I know I said I wasn't going to, but I just changed my mind, you know. I can do that. I am going ahead and just pressing under the bottom edge. So basically at each one of these points, like at this seam line, I'm turning it up so it's about 5/8, 7 inch up. I'm not being, you know, overly fanatical about exact at this point. And then I'm turning it up at the next point, averaging everything out in between, pressing it, and so on and so forth, just so that I have it in general set. A lot of times I don't like to do this ahead of time because the bottom folded edge ends up not matching up exactly where I want it to be. But I think that this fabric, you know, that's a very nice, sturdy, woven cotton, I think that it's going to behave. At least right at this point, I am hoping it's going to behave, so we'll do our best, okay? Okay, so just for fun, I just tied this onto my dress form, and it will fit me better than my dress form, but wow, this is going to be interesting. It's kind of like if you had a little summer halter top, but it's attached to a skirt, you know? So that's fun. That is definitely very fun. I've got a big peekaboo going on right here, which is, you know, part of the design. So we'll see how it goes, but you know, I'm enjoying just having something lighthearted. So the next thing I'm going to start working on is my skirt. And remember, I'm doing the big patch pockets instead of the inseam pockets. So I'm going to get these out and make up my pockets. And I might put a little lace trim or something on it, just because this is so busy that the pocket will kind of disappear if I don't put an edge on something. So let me see what I can find in my stash. Okay, so I've searched around my edges, and I always get asked, why do you do that? It's just so it won't fray. And when I do it, you know, I try not to cut any fabric off, just skim the outside edges. So everything should be the original size. I'm getting hungry. I'm going to take a break, go downstairs, get some lunch, take care of some other stuff, and I will be back up here later on this afternoon. Okay, so welcome to a couple days later. You know, things happen, got busy on stuff, but I need to get these pockets made. So here's the thing, I need to figure out where I'm going to put that lace, because I want to put the lace on. And the fold line on these pockets are 1.25 inches from the top. So I am just going to go ahead and draw that line in so I can see where everything is. So that's the very top edge of my pocket. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what I'm thinking. What am I thinking? Do I really want lace? Yes, I do. Okay, let me go ahead and cut a little piece here. And this does have a right and wrong sides. I don't know if you can tell, this side has a little texture to it. And I think I'm going to place it so the top part of my scallop is about 1/2 inch or so from the top of the fold line. And I changed my mind what I'm going to do. I have this piece of lace. It's very old handmade lace, but it's just this big, and I've been, you know, I hang on to things like that. And I'm going to use it. So I think that this one piece will be just barely enough to make 2 pockets. So it's meant to be. So what I'm going to need to do is trim off this excess fabric at the edge here, and then I'm just going to stitch it on over the fabric. I'm not going to do cut work and cut it out. You know, I think that having the fabric underneath to reinforce it will be nice. But yeah, I think that will be really pretty. So basically, I'm just going to trim fairly close to this edge. I want to make sure I don't catch any of that stitching right there. And then I'm just going to use a straight stitch and put it on, and I'll show you how I do that. I want to show you, if you have these, they are fabulous scissors for getting very close to, but not cutting what you don't want to. And you know, there's controversy on if you cut it with the scalloped edge on top or the scalloped edge on the bottom. I am a scalloped edge on the top kind of person today. So I can lay that right next to where I want to go and get super close and clean, but I'm not actually going beyond it. So anyway, I love them. You know, they've got this little offset and everything, so I guess technically you can go that way. That's how I'm using it today. Just figuring out placement. If that is the top fold of my pocket, I think I kind of like it where it's set down about 1 inch, you know. So with that, if I measure down, let's go 2.5 inches from the top. That will be nice and easy. I'm going to go ahead, find my chalk, and draw a line across each one at 2.5 inches down, and then that will give me a line to place this piece on. I want to show you, just to make my life easier when I go to stitch this on, I am placing this on with Stitch Witchery. Yes, I am. The places where there is no fabric, you know, where there's holes in the lace, you know, the Stitch Witchery will not, you know, be fused to anything in that point. But I think that as this garment is washed, because that's just going to be slightly exposed, it's going to be fine. Plus, once you iron it on, the Stitch Witchery does disappear, you know. So I just wanted to show you. That way when I go to stitch it, it's not going to shift or anything, and it's going to be a lot easier to deal with. So I put a row at the top, I'm going to put a row at the bottom here, all the way across, you know, right near the very bottom edge, because that's where I'm going to be stitching. Give it a very quick steamy press, and then I'll be on my way to sew it on. Okay, and there's so much texture in the lace, I don't really have to worry about getting stuck on my iron, you know. Of course, I did just go over the edge there, but things happen. Okay, so that's how it looks. It's all fine. I'm just going to put a row of stitching all the way down both sides of the lace with some white thread. Okay, so with the lace on now, the next step is to turn this top edge under. They say 1/4 inch, which is fine. And once that is done, where this first fold line is that's marked on the pattern, 1.25 inches down, I'm folding it right there, which is going to give me about 1/8 of an inch here between the fold line and the top of my lace. That's what I am going to use as my guide. You know what? I'm going to take it all the way down so that the fold line matches with the top of my lace. That way I can replicate that easily on this pocket over here. Okay, so once I have it folded like that, what we need to do is stitch just in this upper area here at 5/8 of an inch, you know, right here on each side. And I'm actually going to go all the way around at 5/8 of an inch. It's going to give me a fold line guide, and I think that that's going to make my life a little bit easier. So here, all the way around 5/8 of an inch on both of my pockets. So I wanted to point out, as you know, I am using this Singer 66 that I recently did that is up for sale. And when I was doing her, I black-sided a lot of her parts. You know, that's, instead of chrome, it's blackening. And I'm looking for something here really quick. I just wanted to show you, I also blackened this part, which is a standard old-timey flat foot. She's an old girl. For some reason, don't ask me why, she does not like using that foot. She will not go in reverse with that foot on. So that is why she's using a pretty new chrome hinged foot. But if I sell her, I'm going to include the black foot because, you know, for just the aesthetics and everything when it's displayed or whatever, I think the black foot is really cool with everything else. But I just thought I would point that out. You know, she has a lot of personality, as you can tell, and I have a feeling that she has the same personality as that woman. That's the vibe that I get from her. And she wants the shiny shoes, so she will wear the shiny shoes. There you go. So it's stitched now, and you can see, probably on this side better, my stitching goes all the way around, okay? And so I'm going to come up in here and trim out most of this upper layer here. Actually, I'm going to trim my lace so it's nice and even over here so we can see what we're doing here. And the corner like that, okay? So that's how I'm trimming it to get the bulk out. Throw that away. I'm going to flip this right side out, press out that corner, and at my ironing board, in addition to pressing the corners, where I have my stitching line, I'm just going to turn it under at that point also and make that a pressing line on both sides and the bottom down here. Okay, this fabric is thin enough that, you know, having it doubled in the corners is going to be just fine. If it was a thicker fabric, then I might, you know, do a little bit of mitering or something, but for this, I think that's going to be good. Okay, so I wanted to show you, my mic on here, on the instructions, what they're going to say is to just baste along here to lock this edge down. And if I had thought about it, I would have made my pocket a little bit longer or something so that it was overlapping, so that when I go to stitch it, I just stitch straight on top of my, you know, other stitched row. That would have been too easy though. So because I don't want to just, you know, fuse something on there and close it, I'm probably just going to stitch this by hand so it's not really visible from the outside. Not with a very busy print like this is going to show anyway, you know. But If you wanted to just, you know, machine stitch straight across there, you know what? After all that, I am going to machine stitch straight across there. It is going to have another row of stitching just above this, but I don't think that that's going to really matter. And this fabric is so busy, I don't think anyone will notice. So machine stitching across, looking at this side, and I'll be right back. My next step is to get my skirt front pieces and place my pocket on there. But I just wanted to let you know before I do that, I am going to go ahead and serge all the way around both of my skirt front pieces. And then I'll meet you back at the table and we will get the pockets placed on there. Okay, so I'm going to raise you up just a bit here. This front piece is basically a rectangle. Okay, and if you remember, I made mine slightly narrower just so I didn't have to worry about cutting it out. So if I flip this over the right way, we can see better. In my opinion, pockets fit better for putting your hands in and everything when they're closer to the outside. Okay, so I have my skirt front pattern piece here, and I have it because I did not actually mark the dots where my pocket placement is supposed to go because this fabric is so busy. I figured I would lose those positions. So there's a dot here and a dot here. The top corners of my pocket line up with those two dots. Alrighty, so this is what I am going to do, just to make my life easier because drawing on this fabric is kind of a pain. What I'm going to do is just fold it at those dots, okay, so that I can see them right here. Okay, here's my two dots, and the bottom corners of my fabric and my pattern are all lined up, if you can see down there. And that way, all I have to do is place this pocket right here, hold it in place, and move it, and I am set. So I'm going to go ahead and pin it where it needs to go. Now this pocket's going to be a little more in the front than I think I want. I think I want it to be actually more towards the side. I think I would like them better if they were closer to the side. So with all of that I have just done, let me tell you what I'm going to do. Measure how far it is to the top. And my ruler is the wrong way, so I'm going to do it again. Okay, it is 8 inches from the top of the pocket to the top of my cut edge. I am going to move it over so it's a lot closer to the side. And this is just my own personal preference. You do you, but I'm going to like that better, I think. So I'm just going to keep my 8-inch position here, and I am placing it so I have 2 inches from the outside edge. This is the side seam right here, and that's where I'm going to put my pocket, you know, because that way when I'm like have my hands straight down on my sides, they can go almost into my pockets. If they're in the front, then I have to like go like that and stick them in my pockets, you know. It's potato, but that's what's going to make me happy. So there you go. All right, so I'm going to put the other side in the same position, you know, just 2 inches over and 8 inches down. And then I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and just edge stitch it, you know, reinforcing at the top, edge stitch it all the way around here, and then I will be back. Okay, so I've got my 2 pockets sewn on in the position I want them to be in. You know, you do you. That's where I want mine. Now, what I need to do is get my skirt back piece, which is another big rectangle. You know, here's my 2 fronts here. And so what I'm going to do is serge all the way around my big rectangle, and then once I'm done with that, I'll bring it back to the table here and we will pin it together with my skirt front pieces. Alrighty, so at this point I have my big rectangle of a back piece all serged all the way around, and I am just pinning the side seams together. This is my back to my front, okay? Going to pin that together, stitch it at 5/8 of an inch, and then press that seam allowance open. And I'm going to do that to both sides. Okay, so right now I have this big long strip of a skirt like this, and I need to put gathering stitches into the top. And that's a pretty long length to gather. So I am going to put my stronger thread into the bobbin of the machine, and just the regular thread up in the needle, because that will really help so that I don't have to worry about any threads breaking while I am tugging on gathering this big full skirt here. So let me go ahead and get that switched over. If you haven't seen it before, it's a very heavy duty nylon thread. It's like a very lightweight fishing line, honestly, but if you use any very heavy thread, like even, let me grab something here, something like a quilting thread would be good. Just something that you can pull and pull and pull, and it's not going to break. That's what I want in my bobbin. So let me switch that out, run 2 rows of gathering stitches, one at about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, one about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, okay? 2 rows there, all the way across. I'm just doing one big long strip from starting, not at the very end actually, because I am going to be putting that band there. Okay, so on the pattern piece, do you see where this little dot is? That's where you start your gathering threads. So I am just going to place this over here and put a pin where that dot is. Let's measure that. It is close to 3 inches in, okay? So only do your gathering stitches from about 3 inches in to this side over here at about 3 inches in. Okay. Okay, so I've got my gathering threads in, and I want to show you the white thread is my bobbin thread. I actually sewed it like that so I can see it clearly while I am pulling. And so I'm pulling my bobbin threads. It's going to be a lot easier to gather, okay? So if I pull those two with my super, super, super strong thread, I don't have to worry about it breaking. It pulls a lot easier than the needle thread. Something about the tension, it just is going to pull easier. So that's my 2 cents on gathering long distances. Let me go get my bodice, because I got to get this pinned onto my bodice. But the thing is, remember this skirt, I have this funky little peekaboo opening here. So it's not going to line up exactly like you would think it would. It's going to be a little bit askew. Actually, looking at the instructions, they're not going to have you pull the gathering threads until after you put the front facing piece on. So I need to do that. I am going to have to get some interfacing fused onto this piece. I am going to use my very standard lightweight fusible interfacing that you've seen me use hundreds of times before. So I'm going to go ahead and fuse that on. There is a UPS truck outside. I'm going to go grab a package and I will be right back. All right, so I am over here at my ironing board and I'm just showing you my little cheater way of doing my interfacing. I just have my 2 pieces there, right side up. And I'm just very quickly, very lightly fusing this on so that now I can move it, just trim around the outside edges, and then come back and really give it a good fuse, because like right now, see, it's just barely hanging on. But that's okay. That's just so I have it stuck on enough that I can cut it out clearly. Okay? Okay, so I have these 2 long strips, which are basically rectangles, okay? One side is supposed to be notched. I have not clipped it. The other side is supposed to be not notched. But they're the same. They are the same. What I need to do is finish off the unnotched edge of each one of these. So I'm just going to pick a side, turn it over about 1/4 inch, and then just edge stitch it along here so that it's going to have a nice finish on the outside. So I'm going to do that to just one of the sides of each one of these facing strips. Okay, so on the facing piece, there's a little circle up here. I need to punch out the hole in that circle, and I'm lining it up. You know, this side over here, which does not have a notch, is the side that we finished off, okay? I'm lining this up because I need to mark where this dot is, right here. All right. Now I am going to take this piece and it's going to get pinned over here on this. Here is, you know, my pocket. So this is my top, center top here. And here are the ends of my little gathering threads. I'm going to match this up like this. And I need to sew it at 5/8 of an inch along this line. And then I need to come in this way up to that dot. So just so I have a good reference point, that is 5/8 of an inch there. And where's my edge? There it is. Hang on. Okay, and so here it is. So if I sew up here, pivot at this little intersection, and then come all the way up to the point where this dot is, and then that's where I'm going to back tack and stop. All right, so that is going to be this side. I'm going to do the same thing, but you know, opposite for the other side. So I'm going to have both my center fronts with my facing on it, sewn like that. This part out here, you're just going to let that be open for right now. When I'm sewing this, I want to keep all of my gathering threads out of the way. So I'm just going to kind of pull them this way so that hopefully I won't catch anything. Because at the point where this dot is, that is the point where your gathering threads should be started. All right, so I've got that on. Again, trying to keep my gathering threads out of the way. I am gonna clip off some of the bulk from this corner here. Okay, now for this spot, again, moving my gathering threads, I need to come at it at an angle from this side towards this dot, okay? I'm cutting that like at a diagonal, like so, okay? Now I need to flip this right side out. And by doing it that way, up here at the top, I should have my seam allowance here on nice and upright and a little enclosed area here, okay? Before I turn all of this, I believe I need to understitch it. And yes, they do tell you to understitch it, so I'm very happy about that. Okay, so I'm gonna start it down here at the bottom. And the seam allowances are gonna go towards the facing side, okay? So when I open this up flat, I want all of these seam allowances that way towards the facing. And then from the outside, as I'm looking at it, I'm gonna do a row of stitching right here, right just barely on this side of that seam line where I have my ink there, okay? All the way up as far as I can get. When you get close to the very tip of this corner, you're not going to be able to fit your foot in there. You know, probably stop right about there. You'll know when you get there. Okay, but just make sure that as you're sewing, the seam allowances are always underneath this side. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go do that for both sides. Okay, so if you can see, that is my row of understitching. Now, this is a fairly lightweight fabric, so I don't think I'm going to have any problems. But if you've done this and you feel a lot of bulk in here, it might be a good idea to trim some of it out. And what I would do is grab some pinking shears, as I do, and just trim about half of the seam allowance off. So I'm trying to do this without cutting anything I'm not supposed to. And I would just trim it off about that much. And you know, since I started, I might as well finish it. But that way you're not going to have that big step down where the seam allowance ends. And because we are going to be putting buttonholes on here, for me, for my buttonholer, it's going to make it easier having this trimmed out. So there you go. That is one more step that I'm going to be doing. Okay, so now that that is trimmed, I'm going to go ahead and press this So turning it right side out. I've got my handy dandy chopstick back here to poke out that corner, and I'm going to go ahead and press it. And when I do, I want to turn in these little diagonal cuts so that it's pretty much just straight up and down like that on the top, okay? And then along the whole edge, because it's been understitched, it's going to fold over really nice. This is what it looks like on the inside after I've pressed it, and I have decided that I'm going to go ahead and machine stitch just down this edge. Yes, it will have a seam on the outside, but this print's so busy I don't care about that, and it's going to keep this from wanting to flap open on me. I think it'll be more stable. At least that's what I'm hoping at this point. So once I'm done with all this pressing, just stitching it straight down. I'm only going to start my stitch about 1 inch from the top. That way I will be beyond all of these gathering threads and I won't lock them into place. I also wanted to point out I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom because I do need to hem this down here. So I'm actually going to stop right about here, which is probably about 6 inches from the bottom, give or take. I think that that will be good. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and put this together. So I have my skirt on the bottom here. So here's one side, here's the other side, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. And then here is my bodice. So with my skirt, I'm just going to show you part of it here. With my skirt right side up, and with my bodice, remember, one side had the bottom edge folded in, the other side did not. I'm going to be taking the side that did not have the fold, okay, and line that up. So this corner over here that's sticking out, I'm going to line it up so that it is just barely on the inside of my bodice piece, okay, so that when I can flip it over, I have plenty of room to wrap this around it, okay, if that makes any sense. So I want to make sure I can still reach my gathering threads there. So let me see if I can do this so you can see. So here is the skirt, here is my bodice. And if you can see, when I look at it this way, my bodice piece right here is just barely peeking out, like less than 1/16 of an inch. That's how I am lining that up. All right, so let me go ahead and stick a sturdy pin there, and when I sew it, I will be opening this up as I sew this way, okay? So that is in place. The next piece right here, where this first seam line is, that matches up with the side seam on the skirt, okay? So I'm gonna pin that here, and I'm gonna pin it on either side, just because I think that is a little more sturdy for me. All right, moving on. The next seam here is a side, but my center back is between these two, all right? So I'm gonna fold this in half to find my center back, which is right here, okay? And I'm gonna stick a pin there so I can see it easy. Now my center back of my skirt does not have a fold. I thought I had a fold there, but I don't. So I'm just gonna fold these two in half to find that position, okay? And match up my center back of my bodice with my center back of my skirt. Okay. Skipping this one, going to this one, which is the side seam. So again, moving up to this side seam on the skirt and matching that up. And then back to the center front on the other side. So all the way over here, pulling this piece over, and put my bodice piece on top so that I just barely do not see the skirt peeking out. Put a pin there. And now I need to start pulling these gathering threads to take up all that extra slack there and to fill in the blanks. So basically what I'm going to do is, you know, pulling my strong bobbin threads, I'm going to gather one side up to the center back, make sure that's all good, and then from this side pull gathering threads and gather it to the center back on the opposite side. Okay, this is actually going to be a fairly full skirt. On the picture here, it doesn't look like it, but I think it's going to be more looking like this, kind of almost like a fit and flare kind of look, you know, that classic shape. So one thing I wanted to mention, you know, don't know if this matters to anybody, but when I'm pulling a lot of gathering threads, especially, you know, because I have two different layers going on here, two different threads, what I do is I will pull out, you know, a good length of it, however that is, and I don't know why it's not pulling. I think I have a pin stuck on it. But anyway, I've pulled out, you know, maybe about 10 inches worth of thread here. What I like to do is go ahead and tie a knot in those two threads down here. So I have a tiny knot right there. And what that's going to do is, as I am moving my gathers down, it's going to keep them from getting disjointed, because it would be really easy for me to just pull one thread and then the other one doesn't pull as much and it gets a little out of sort. And this keeps them even as I go along. So anyhow, I'm almost done, but look, like here, that's the amount of gather. So it's quite a bit of gather. So I'm glad that my fabric is thin. If you have very thick fabric, this is going to be a little bit more challenging. Still doable, but a little bit more challenging. All right, so it's all gathered up. So I need to sew this on. Now when I stitch it, I am going to be looking at it from this view. I want to be able to see all of these gathers and keep a very close eye on how they are behaving. Okay, so when I get it started, I want to make sure that this facing part of the bodice is down out of the way. You know, start stitching in this little corner right here and go straight across at 5/8 of an inch. But if I'm looking at it this way, I can, you know, make any little gathering adjustments as I go. I can hold them nice and flat here, pull them out this way as I'm stitching over them, so that nothing is going to get askew, you know, because that is never fun, having to pick out gathered stitches later. All right, I've got it sewn on. I think everything went well. Looks to be good. So at this point, I have some extra threads that I need to clip, and just get this little gathering thread out of the way. Okay, I'm going to pull the facing of the bodice on here around and stick a pin right here. Okay, so this is the right side of that center front. Okay, and this is the wrong side. I just have it barely started being pinned there. I'm going to leave that alone for a second and come over here to the opposite side and trim my excessive threads and do the same thing where I'm going to open up this folded part, make sure all the seam allowances are going straight up in there, and wrap it around like this. Okay, so that then on the inside, I can lay it flat here. I'm going to pin this facing down where we pre-folded it, remember, right here, and get that started. Okay, those are the two trickiest points, and there are a lot of layers right here. Just letting you know, that could be very thick. If you were using thick fabric, that could be a handful. What they want us to do is to go ahead and pin our facing down over the seam allowance here. So I'm just gonna kind of match up my side seams, of course. And they want us to just slip stitch this in, which is fine. I think that that would work. Honestly, with the amount of thickness in here and right here, I think that taking some time and just sitting back with a cup of something nice and whip stitching it all in is going to be a lot easier than trying to very carefully and strategically top stitch it with the machine, if you know what I mean. Okay, so once I have the side seams matched up, everything should kind of fall into place in between them. So I'm just kind of stretching it out with my hands like this. And I want to find that midpoint, which is right here. Put a pin there. And then once I have that pinned, then I can just go ahead and pin the rest of it. So I'm going to take a break. Get a cup of something nice. I'm not telling you if it's caffeinated or otherwise, because I haven't decided yet. And go get this stitched together. And then when I come back up, we're going to be working on buttons and buttonholes down here. Hello, welcome to the next day. So just to bring you up to speed. Yesterday I did that whole thing where I whip stitched the inside of the bodice to the skirt. And when I was done with that, oops, I got a thread there. Just for funsies, I went ahead, took it into my bedroom and tried it on, just holding the skirt close. And I can tell you, it fits me differently than my dress form. Lots of skin, way lots of skin. But when I am tying this together, I actually am tying it tighter together here in the front than what's on my dress form. So these straps are almost like in a V shape by the time I'm done. So I just don't want it loose here. I want it as tight here as possible. And I have also realized there is no way you can wear a bra with this at all if you know, unless you're purposely wanting to expose your bra. But I don't have a bra that's that cute that goes with this, so, you know, you got that going. The waist does fit my waist, so that is good, but yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting. So what I need to do to finish this up is hem it and put the buttons on. So I need to open up my machine over here, which is a 201. That's the one that I'm using my buttonholer with. So let me get that cabinet opened up, and I'm going to take this off back to the table so I can show you how I'm going to mark my buttonholes. Okay, so down here at my table, the hem that they're going to want you to do on this is just a little narrow 5/8 of an inch hem. And so I want to show you how I'm going to be working that. First, I'm trimming my little facing so it's exactly the same level as my skirt front. And if you remember, I did sew, I know what that is. I did sew my facing to the skirt. Where are you? Here you are. Down here all the way until about this far from the bottom, okay? And what my gut wants to do is to flip this to the right side like so, and pin it like this, okay? And sew it straight across here at 5/8 of an inch. And I know that since I, did sew up to that point, it is a little bit garbled right here. But just to sew this little bit of facing, I think that's going to be fine. Let me stick a pin here really quick. And so because I'm going to be doing a 5/8 inch finished hem, that's why I'm making this at 5/8 of an inch. If I was going to do a 1 inch hem, I'd make this stitch at 1 inch, But just so I see exactly where I'm going, I'm going to go ahead and draw that line right across there. So I'm going to do this to both of my center front facings on both the right and left side. Okay, so now that I have that stitched across there, I am going to come in here and clip a lot of the bulk out of this corner here. I'm leaving about 1/8 of an inch there. And you know what? I am going to trim this also, just because I can. Excuse me. Pop that out, right side out here. Get my little handy dandy chopstick to poke it out the rest of the way. Okay, so now when this is lying nice and flat, this part here is folded up about 5/8 of an inch, okay? I can either turn it under and do a narrow hem like that, or I can just leave it up flat and sew along my serged edge. Either one will work. I am probably going to turn it under so I have, I think, a neater looking edge, okay? So it's going to end up being about a 3/8 inch hem, you know, tucked under about a 1/4 inch like that. And then it is a circle, no, it is a flat bottom skirt. So this should be easy to hem. You know, there's no curves to work around. So I'm just going to edge stitch it over here after I press my corners, and then the hem should be done. Okay, so for this is the buttonhole guide here. It just has a little button placement on it. And for this skirt, it says for the skirt part, I need 7 buttons. And I've decided just to use these dark colored buttons. I think that will work. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And before I get over to the machine, I wanted to show you, this is my buttonholer, if you've never seen. I actually have several buttonholers. This is just the one that I usually use on short shank Singer machines. And basically in the back here, there is a place for a little cam. And you need to pick a cam that's your button size. So this button is just over 5/8 of an inch, if you can see, okay? And so I will probably get a 3/4 inch little cam, and this is for covering up your presser feet if you cannot drop your feed dogs. On the 201, I can drop my feed dogs, so that stays in the box. Nope, it looks like everything is either 5/8 or 13/16, which is just over 3/4. 3/4 is 12/16, you know, divided by 4 and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to use the bigger one and just not cut my buttonhole opening all the way across. I think that will work. So I'm just going to pop this in here like so, and get it set in there. Come on now. Oops, wrong way. Sorry about that. Okay, so it's popped in, and I'm going to go over to my machine, hook it up, and I will show you making one of the buttonholes. The rest of them, you know, you only need to see it once. But before I do that, what I'm going to need to do is get my buttonholes marked. And on this opening, the buttonholes are going to be going horizontal, okay? So that is important to note. And I am just going to go with the marks that they have provided. I'm not going to improvise those at all. Now on this skirt, they have two different buttonhole guides. One's for this view and one for this view. I want to make sure that when I put it on, my very first buttonhole is near the top. And it looks to me like they have it set down slightly. And I did not see on the instructions where they want you to put a hook or anything like that underneath. So even though, well, maybe it's just on the pattern piece, because here it looks like they have it set down maybe less than 1 inch. Let's see, 3/4 of an inch. We'll go for it. Why not? Why not, huh? So I am going to be putting my buttons, my buttonholes, I should say, on this side. And what I'm going to do is just put this up here near the top, and where I can see this buttonhole going straight across, I am just going to kind of carry that over and draw my little line over here, okay? And again here, and so on and so forth, all the way down, so I just have this line marked first. Okay, so now that all those are done, The next thing I want to do is mark the starting point, and that is the position over here. This is the outer edge right here. Okay, that's what this is. So the distance between that outer edge and where the buttonhole starts is just over 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm going to lay my ruler at 1/2 inch along the edge, and wherever one of those lines I drew previously is, I'm just going to draw a little crosshatch mark there. So I'm going to end up with little crosses all the way down here. Okay. Now I'm going to be making my buttonholes once again going this way. So for my purposes using this, that's the only mark I need. I need a starting point and I need the direction. So just to make it a little easier, when I get over to my machine, I am just going to come back really quick and extend these horizontal lines a little bit farther so that I can see it on the other side of where that buttonhole is going to go. And this chalk, it'll dust off as soon as I iron it, so that is not a big deal. And 2 and 1. Okay. All right, so now I have that done. You can see that's my big line, and I'm going to head over to the machine. Okay, so this is my Singer 201. Yes, she is plain original black, but you know what? She was the first 201 that I ever took apart and rebuilt the motor and everything, so she has a special place in my heart. These are fabulous machines, amazing machines. Very heavy and very complex to tear apart and put together. That's why I do very few of them, but they are great. So I've got my buttonholer on her, and I just did the first one. If you can see it in there, it does a really nice oval shaped buttonhole. And so I'm going to show you as she does the second one here. So at this point, I'm just going to raise up her presser foot, move the whole contraption up to the next buttonhole. And I'm going to put the needle down where those two lines meet. Okay, so my needle, you can't see it, but it's straight down where those lines are meeting. The line I drew out, there's a little hash mark on here. I'm going to line that up so that that little hash mark is lined up with the line I drew. On the back here, there's a knob. I'm turning it until I get to the starting point, which is where this has come as far forward as I can, and it is just starting to make the turn right there. Okay, now I'm going to set it down. My needle is already down, and I'm just going to hit the gas and get started. Okay, so you can see it goes all the way around like an oval, or hopefully you can see. And at this point, what I do is I start at the base, I come all the way up around, and I give one extra little turn around the base. So there's 2 rows of stitching on the bottom, because that's where the most wear is going to be when it wants to pull apart. Okay, so then I'm going to call that one good, move it down again, and finish up the other 5 buttonholes. Okay, so now that I have the buttonholes done, what I'm going to use is my buttonhole cutting scissors with that little gap, and you can just start it, come all the way in and start it where you need to, like that, and just carefully trim as far as you want. And that way I can stop it a little bit before the end of the buttonhole stitch, but I can still clear my button through, because remember I made my buttonholes slightly longer, because you know that was the option. Once I know my buttonhole go through, I'm just going to run my fingernail back and forth in there to try to pull out any little threads that can cause issues. Trim that out and move on to the next one. So let me go ahead and get all of these little guys cut open. Okay, so to sew the buttonholes, the buttons on, first I want this, oops, this is the wrong side. That's my buttonhole side. Hang on. Hang on, flipping my dress around here. Okay, I'm going to want to sew my buttons on, according to the pattern, about 5/8 of an inch in. They had it just over 1/2 an inch, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is get my ruler and my chalk here and draw a line straight down at 5/8 of an inch. Whoopsie, well, that was not correct. We'll just pretend that I didn't do that, okay? Just forget about that. Okay, so I have a line drawn all the way down at 5/8 of an inch, okay? So what I'm going to do is just kind of line up the other side so I can see where everything is. So hang on a sec. Just have this folded in half. And yes, I'm looking at the wrong side here of this layer, but I can still see where those buttonholes are. So where there's a buttonhole, I'm just going to make a little crosshatch mark straight through. Kind of a mess right there, but that's okay. Here, here, and that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now I have like a little crosshatch type place, and that's going to be the position that I sew my button on. So I'm just going to get a needle and thread, get all of these stitched on nice and securely, especially the one up here at the top. That's critical. Get those stitched on, and then I'm going to try it on for you. So prepare to be blinded by some skin that has not seen the light of day in decades, because oh my gosh, it's going to be like a nuclear explosion. It's going to be so white. So anyhow, I'll be back shortly. Okay, do I have volume? Yes, I do. All right, so here's the thing. Comfortable, yes, but lots of skin. And I am showing you front and center, but if I go to turn, this hand is coming right here because there is so much of an opening right here, you know? I could easily flash some, sorry. There's so much of an opening there, I could easily flash some side boobs, so I'm just gonna tuck my little ties in there for propriety right now. It's comfortable, and for around the house and playing in the garden and hoping the UPS truck doesn't drive up and everything like that, I think it's gonna be fine. It kind of reminds me of wearing a bikini top, okay? So if you are comfortable with that, you'd probably be comfortable with this, but look how white that skin is. Wow. I do have my little skin peeking out there, which has not seen the light of day since I was in high school, so that's exciting. So anyhow, that was fun. You know, this is meant to be a fun dress. No, I'm not wearing it out. No, I'm not wearing it to church. No, I'm not wearing it to all of those inappropriate places. But for hanging out in the garden, chasing the chickens out of the vegetable patch and everything, I think it's fine. And I like my lace on my pockets. So there's that. So anyway, hope you liked it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Living my bucolic life, reality city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and wheel the horses in to the barn, and time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.